In American football, the aim of the game is to throw the ball to another player who catches it at the end of the pitch. As you can probably tell from that description, I don't watch American football that often. However, whilst I was sitting in church praying to the Lord, I was wondering what aspects of different sports could be taken and applied to European football, or as it should be known, football. But before I go any further, if you need a place where you can keep up to date with the latest transfer news, find all the match stats you need from games across the globe, and watch highlights and stream live football matches, then you need to download the OneFootball app. I use the OneFootball app because it's completely free, and not only do they have stats and transfer news, but they also have videos to watch and articles to read, which is where I get a lot of my ideas for new videos. And as I said before, you can stream live football matches and watch highlights all on the app. Downloading the OneFootball app will help support the channel as well, so I'll leave it linked in the description below. So in American football, the most famous position is the quarterback. It's the orchestrator of the attack and probably one of, if not the single most crucial role in all of sports. Famous quarterbacks include Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers and Patrick Mahomes. Basically, you know in American football where they do the wrestling in the middle of the pitch, and in the balls maybe some other sports like basketball as well, so subscribe to the channel and click the bell so you don't miss out on that, and put some other tactics or features of other sports that could be taken into football in the comments section below. Also how they line up at the start of playing American football. It's kind of similar to how sides like Manchester United line up in the middle third with the ball. Not in terms of the formations used, but both involve eventually trying to, but I'll then also come on to the wide receivers and slot receivers later on in the video. The quarterback is essentially the playmaker needing an excellent range of passing to find runners in behind. This can also be applied to footballers like in the NFL. In football you need to move the ball up the pitch, and you can do this by playing passes in behind the back line to find runners. However, instead of being a great thrower of the ball, in football you need to be a great kicker or passer of the ball. Now in football this is obviously what central midfielders do, think Pirlo or Toni Kroos, who drop in front of the opposition's midfield line to receive the ball and then progress the ball with their long or incisive passes. In this sense, these deep line playmakers, registas, whatever you want to call them, are football's version of the quarterback. However, I feel like this type of player could be more effectively utilised like an NFL quarterback if they were positioned in what you'd associate with a wide centre back position in a back three. The reason for this is because you want your best passer and the most creative deeper line player to receive the ball facing goal with the most amount of time on the ball as possible with the best passing angles. Now usually people want the playmaker playing centrally just in front of the two centre backs. However, I think this makes the player easy to press as they are in the most congested deeper part of the pitch because the opposition sides tend to defend in a 4-4-2 or a 4-5-1, or at least with one or two forward players, so they're able to cover these central zones. But because of this, if you use a back three, it's these wider centre back positions that have the most space. To effectively press these players, the opposition side would have to defend in a narrow front three, which only Liverpool really do regularly. So in most games these players are going to be able to receive the ball with time and space and facing goal, whereas the defensive midfielder is likely to receive the ball from the side or with his back to goal and likely going to be under pressure immediately. But this doesn't mean that you need to play with a back three or have these creative players as your wide centre backs, although of course that could be an option. Instead you just need a system with a three at the back in possession. This could be done with a back four where the fullbacks push forward down the flanks, allowing one of the central midfielders to drop into a wider position in the back three. You could have both fullbacks advancing and two central midfielders dropping into that space with one of the centre backs pushing up into a temporary central defensive midfield position, which we did see Louis van Gaal's Ajax do in the 90s, with Frank Rijkaard being that player, and I guess you could call this type of centre back a libero. However, instead of having these central midfielders drop into those wide centre back positions, Louis van Gaal would instruct the fullbacks, Michael Reiziger and Frank de Boer, to hold those narrower, deeper positions, and this could be a great option if you have creative players like Trent Alexander-Arnold or João Cancelo at fullback. But it all depends on the individual players in each side. If your best long and incisive passers are in central midfield, then you want a possession shape that allows them to move into those positions, and the same goes for if it's your fullbacks or centre backs. In regards to Manchester United, with the current squad, the best players who are suited to this quarterback role, in my opinion, would be Diego Dalot, who has really improved his long passing over the past year or so, James Garner, who is probably the best deep line playmaker at the club at the moment, and maybe even Maguire or Lindelof, who are fairly decent long passers as well. Though if Ten Hag did want to bring in a specialist for this role, I would target Tiankoop Miners at Atalanta, as he's got a phenomenal passing range, able to ping passes over the back line to release forward runners, and he could be used as a central midfielder in a double pivot or ahead of a single pivot on the left side and drop into that wide position in the back three and become the quarterback in the side. If we look at other teams, we can potentially see players who would be world-class quarterbacks. Trent at Liverpool is the obvious one for me, and Klopp does kind kind of use him in this position, as often you'll see Robertson push forward down the flank, whilst Trent holds a narrower, deeper position. Thiago would also be world class in this role, so potentially Liverpool could evolve their system so it's either Trent or Thiago who drop into that right-sided position in the back three, or they could use Fabinho as a centre-back and have him push up into that regista position, leaving Van Dijk as a central centre-back and having Trent and Thiago either side in those quarterback positions. City have quite a few players who could perform this role, from Laporte to Cancelo and even Rodri, even though I do think his press resistance and quick first-time passing does make him hugely valuable in the central role to play around the pressure. If we go back in history, I think someone like David Beckham would have been the perfect quarterback, as he was one of the best crossers the game has ever seen, able to arrow and bend the ball into the perfect area, which would have been very effective in the quarterback position when backing up the play, being given some attacking license because of the other two covering players in the deepest line in possession. But he also had insane passing range as well, and his ability to drive the ball like Tiger Woods from a tee off would have been perfect for releasing on running so-called wide receivers, and getting the ball to the wide receiver in behind the defensive line. The wide receiver in American football is a player who makes a run down the side and has to catch the throw from the quarterback, which is very similar to a wide player making a diagonal run in behind and a deeper line playmaker finding him with a long pass over the top of the back line. Examples of wide receivers are Odell Beckham Jr. and Jerry Rice. NFL wide receivers have to be quick, have excellent off the ball movement and have a great catch. In football, the equivalent would also be that the player has to be quick and have excellent movement in behind, but instead of having a great catch, they would obviously have to have a great touch and finishing ability. In football, this could be a winger who holds a wide position, but it could also be a fullback, a wide forward, or even a central midfielder making a run from a deeper position. A wide attacker who would be perfect for this role would actually be a player who's already at Manchester United, and that's Marcus Rashford, because despite having a poor last season, Rashford has shown in previous years not only his ability to time runs in behind a high back line, but also his finishing ability once he gets into wide shooting positions in the box. Think back to the goal against Chelsea on the opening day of the 2019-20 season when Chelsea's defensive line is caught high up the pitch with no pressure on the passer, which is Pogba, who clips a ball over the back line, finding Rashford's perfectly timed diagonal run between the right back and centre back. However, his job isn't done there, as he has two more things to do to secure the goal, which is obviously the finishing ability, but also the pace and the first touch to get into that position. One player who I think could provide this in a side is Marcos Alonso, who is 31 and has 1 year left on his Chelsea contract. Maybe not for Manchester United, but I could see him being an excellent wide receiver, playing as a left back or preferably a left wing back, who in possession pushes high and wide and can either be used as a wide target man, allowing his side to play long diagonal balls into him to compete in the air or bring down on his chest. Obviously, with Malacia being signed, this isn't going to happen for Manchester United, and to be honest, defensively Alonso isn't great, but it is a thought experiment worth thinking about. But Alonso also has the acceleration and power to burst in behind and is actually a fantastic finisher when it comes to shooting inside the box, so I reckon a club like Arsenal could be a good destination, as Arsenal was predominantly playing in a 4-2-3-1. Under Arteta, they do like to switch to a 5-4-1 during certain phases of the game, and if Alonso was brought in, he'd provide a greater aerial and goal scoring threat than Kieran Tierney, suiting a 5 at the back where Tierney could be deployed as a left-sided centre-back in a back 3, where he has thrived for Scotland and Celtic before. But at the top of the market, as in the NFL, the most valuable player would be a wide receiver, which I'm guessing is someone like Odell Beckham Jr. in the NFL, whereas in football it's Kylian Mbappe. Mbappe has the speed to be an NFL wide receiver, so he's perfect on the football pitch, whilst also having world-class ball control and finishing ability. But even someone like Erling Haaland could be used in this role. Say if Guardiola wanted to use both Julian Alvarez and Haaland in the starting 11, he could deploy Haaland from the left side, with Alvarez dragging opposition centre-backs over to the right, or into deeper central areas in behind the midfield, creating space in behind the back line for Haaland to make a diagonal run into, and like Mbappe, he's more than capable of putting the ball into the back of the net from there. However, if Ten Hag wanted his left winger to hold his width religiously, then instead he would have to have the wide receiver run come from a player in the left-sided half space, which is similar to what is known in American football as the slot receiver. The slot receiver is a player that starts on the inside and runs through the opposition system, so applying this to football, this would be a central attacking midfielder, similar to Bernardo Silva or Kevin De Bruyne's position in Pep Guardiola's 3-2-5 offensive shape. See, when we think about movement in behind, we often assume it would come from a striker or one of the two wide players, and this is how the opposition thinks as well. Both fullbacks and centre-backs are prepared for these types of runs in behind, however I think Ten Hag could get some inspiration from the slot receivers in American football. He could have the winger on the slot receiver's side, let's say Jadon Sancho for example, hold a high and wide position to keep the opposition fullback deep and wide, whilst the centre forward, say Ronaldo, initially drifts over to that side to almost draw the centre back into marking him. Once this has happened, Sancho just needs to hold his width, whilst Ronaldo has to draw the centre back out of that position with a movement deep or to the opposite side, opening up that space between the right back and centre back, allowing an attacking midfielder, Bruno Fernandes for example, to make a run from deep, off of the back of the opposition central midfielder who wouldn't be expecting this sort of run. And if United are using a quarterback with a great range of passing, United should have the opportunity of releasing Bruno Fernandes in behind the back line from a central position, as kind of happens in the NFL with slot receivers, though it is a bit different to be fair. But we don't just have to have the player receiving the ball in behind the back line, as often if the team sits deep or we just don't have world class passers in the side, then this is a hard tactical play to pull off. But instead we could have a slot receiver receiving the ball in the areas which would translate to the half space between the lines of the opposition system, and a player who I think would be perfect for this slot receiver role, who is phenomenal when receiving the ball in behind the back line or between the lines, is Christopher Nkunku. I've spoken about Christopher Nkunku quite a few times on this channel. I've even got a whole video analysing him, so I'll leave that linked below, but as I'm sure you all know, he's the complete attacking midfielder, being a creative threat when around the box, but also thriving when making runs ahead of play in behind the back line into goal scoring positions. Now it's unlikely that Nkunku's going to move from RB Leipzig this summer, as he has signed a new contract, but he has got a release clause next summer. But let's go through the full experiment anyway and imagine Nkunku in this Manchester United side. Nkunku could be used as the attacking midfielder playing behind Cristiano Ronaldo, but could also be used as a left-sided attacker, playing in front of an overlapping left back who can facilitate his movement in field. But Ten Hag could also take another element from American football, and that is what's known in the NFL as a route tree, which is a numerical system used to identify specific runs that the offensive players could make. There's 9 different movements which show different runs a receiver can make. Now in football we do also see attacking players vary their movements, but not to the same extent as we do in the NFL, and definitely not as well organised or tactically sophisticated. Rather than just having a winger start wide and make a run in behind, by taking inspiration from the route tree in American football, Ten Hag could have the players on the flanks working in tandem and using their movements together to open up space to then receive the ball. Using Nkunku as what I'm referring to as a slot receiver, you could have him start wide, and rather than making a run in behind, we want him to receive the ball in the left-sided half space, so he could instruct Bruno Fernandes to drop deep in front of the opposition's midfield line, dragging that midfield slightly higher up the pitch, and then after that movement, Shaw could overlap down the left flank, trying to force the opposition right back to retain a wider and deeper position, whilst Ronaldo drifts over to the left as well, pinning the right-sided centre-back into the back line. And all of these movements are designed to pin the defenders backwards, whilst dragging the midfield line up the pitch. And in doing so, Nkunku can then make a late movement into this space, receive the ball, turn, and then drive at the opposition's back line. So you can see we can take elements from American football's receivers, and not just release players in behind the back line, but also allow players to receive the ball between the lines in an increased amount of space. So those were my ways that Ten Hag and football in general can take inspiration from American football. I may also do videos on other sports like basketball, Gaelic football, rugby. Give me some suggestions in the comment section below, and I may make a video on it in the future, and check out some of my other videos which will be linked in the description below as well.